Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Public Safety Committee meeting for March the 12th. Time is 16:30 hours. First thing on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes from our February 12th meeting. Have you guys both had a chance to review?
I have.
Can I hear a motion then?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Next, seeing no visitors for public comment, we'll move into our chief's reports. We'll start with Chief Chafin.
Thank you, sir. Starting with the dispatch report. Total phone calls received by dispatch, just over 3,000 for the month. Calls for service, just over 1,400. That compared to 1,500 last year. Year-to-date number, 3,049 compared to 3,239. Breakdown by department, 79% of those calls were directed towards police, 21% fire and EMS. Overall, the busiest day of the week was Friday, averaging 58 calls. Busiest district was District 2 with 490, and then times of day, 1 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 8 o'clock in the morning are all very, very close in terms of being the busiest time for the month. Any questions on the first page?
No, I think.
Good.
Moving on to the patrol division, in February 2025, traffic stops up 304 compared to 259 last year. Year-to-date numbers also slightly up as well, 595 compared to 576. Citations, both for the month and year-to-date, are up. Parking citations, 41 for the month, compared to a much higher number last year. Again, this is when we were in the discussion of raising the parking fines last year, which I think has long-term been effective. Misdemeanor citations, much lower, 1 in February, 3 year-to-date, compared to 7 and 19 at this point last year. Accident data, roughly the same across the board, monthly and year-to-date for property damage and injury accidents. We were looking at 32 total in February of 25 compared to 33 last year, and we're at 76 so far compared to 70 last year. Private property numbers consistent month-to-date, year-to-date, that number is up slightly, 34 compared to 26. In the next category, I'll just point out a slight drop, positive drop in the alcohol drug-related, just 1 for the year so far compared to 4 last year. Taking a look at our multi-accident intersection locations, 2 to highlight. We have College and Main Street where we had 2, and then we had 3 at High Street and Interstate 76. Same situations that we're used to seeing. I think you have accidents there as you have both lanes turning to go northbound from the ramp on round. You have cars essentially merging or crossing their lane. That was one of those. We had one ACDA as a vehicle was at the stoplight, and then another car rear-ended it behind it. We did have same on High Street approaching the intersection, and we did have one failure to yield left turn. A northbound vehicle that was turning left to go westbound on 76 was struck by a vehicle that was coming southbound. They had turned in front of them. So looking at...
Would you by chance know if the College in Maine was actually in the square, or?
So for the intersections, you can have, according to the OH1 report, an intersection accident, which is an accident that actually occurs inside the intersection, or you also have intersection related, which we usually include. And intersection related means it's directly related to the movement of vehicles through the intersection. So off the top of my head, I do not know if College in Maine was directly in the square or if it was just off of the square, but I can certainly follow up on those 2 for you.
I'd like for you to follow up on that, because with the downtown improvement project, that would be good information to have, you know, and because I don't remember but a couple severe accidents ever happening in the square area.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, is there any other information, whether for the safety director or for the committee's purposes, that discussion is continuing, that you'd like us to pull instead of just, we certainly can just look at these 2 last month, but if there's other data related to that.
I think it'd be good information to have that as we go through the design process and stuff.
Yeah, I know that when Dispatch Supervisor Cynthia was your administrative assistant chief, she was tracking motor vehicle accidents for me within the downtown square area. Maybe we can reboot that search and have up-to-date 5-year numbers on that. That'd be beneficial for this entire process as we go through a public charrette and discussions of traffic safety and pedestrian safety and all of that. So.
Some of the things that was with the last plan that was, you know, spent, it was the single lanes and stuff like that there.
Yeah.
And, you know, that, I think safety's going to have a play into this, you know, because trying to get fire trucks through there and that kind of stuff too. You know, with
For
accidents.
purposes of that data, what would the committee or safety director, what are we considering the square in that look back? So how far out from the square would we draw that perimeter?
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say certainly, obviously, the main square intersection, but I would also go to the four quadrants, if you
Four
will.
quadrants.
So maybe Maple Street at High, I would go to College at North and South Pardee, if you will. I'd go west from Broad to North-South Lyman. You know,
And down
sort
the
of,
middle.
Chief, what we form as our barriers to downtown.
Basically,
events, use
when
those
yeah,
intersections. Yep.
those intersections, okay.
And then, honestly, if something comes up in that search which is unique or normal and not far from there, I think that'd be beneficial to know too. If you had something on Wright Drive, for instance,
Yeah.
or something that was King Street oriented, that's all something we should know about as we look at the
Yeah,
improvements.
because some of those could just be people backing out
Correct.
versus an actual collision. I knew somebody that was,
I think the vast majority of those, Mr.
Yeah.
Rosberg, are exactly what you're saying.
a friend of mine was eastbound on College and a box truck blew the High Street light and took her out pretty good, the car. But those don't happen that often there. So I think most of them are back out situations, but that'd be great information
think
to
Yep.
I
move
just wanted
forward
to
with.
bring it up at
Yeah.
this time because as we start the planning process, I think it's going to be very important that, you know, we look at all that stuff.
Yep, happy to start looking at that information and then share with the committee for sure.
Thank you.
Street breakdown, High Street, as per usual, had the most accidents, followed closely by 76, and College also had 3 accidents last month as well. Taking a look at some of the investigative report data, I'll highlight a few things. Thefts are up for the month numbers, but also year-to-date numbers slightly. Domestic violence, that's one we talked about a lot last year. Right now, we're sitting at 6 domestic violence incidents for the year compared to, we were at 13 last year. Sex offenses, unfortunately trending the same, 5 and 5 year-to-date. Overdoses, we had 2 in the month of February, which we'll highlight on the report. We've had 3 year-to-date, which is higher than last year. OVI's up for the month, 12 year-to-date compared to 15. Warrant service cases, pretty consistent across the board. We have had 3 gun weapon-related offenses already this year, and mental illness, 6 year-to-date compared to 10 at this point last year. Overall, report numbers down 81 compared to 91 month-to-date, and same year-to-date on that trend. Any questions on this page before we move on?
None for me.
So the only thing I will highlight at the top that I usually, when we talk about the districts here, you will notice that there are 6 cases that were out, which is an unusually high number for us. So just for the committee's benefit, we did have 2 of those related to a traffic stop offense where the stop started in the city, but they, since they're charged with failure to comply, did not stop before they got out of the city, and that led to those investigative reports being associated with an address outside of our normal districts. We had a warrant arrest, very similar, that was started in the city but occurred just outside. We also had a follow-up for a school welfare check that turned into a case that we had to initially document. So again, not a large number, but since we don't usually see 6 outside of our normal districts or outside the city, I wanted to explain why that was. Total arrests, 39 for the month compared to 34 last year. We're at 87 year-to-date compared to 85 at this time. Taking a look at our non-investigative reports, the highest there was assisting householders and motorists. Training highlights, we had a fast training firearms arrest and self-defense tactics, SWAT supervisor course that was actually put on by the Medina County SWAT team. And that was targeted towards supervisors, OIC, officers that are going to be the on-the-scene responders that are going to be requesting aid from the SWAT team, so making sure they understand expectations, roles, and things like that. We had one of our detectives get recertified in the CVSA. We had our own defensive tactics class internally, and also our tactical combat casualty care classes internally as well. Any questions on this page? Officer of the month for January was Officer Josh Ambergy. Josh was hired last year, so he's one of our newer officers and has just done a really fantastic job, really hit the ground running. You can see some of his stats there at the top, but some of his case highlights there while he was checking on an intoxicated female that was stumbling across the street. He was essentially just checking her welfare, but she became uncooperative, eventually secured her. She resisted arrest, and in searching her, he recovered 5.78 grams of methamphetamine. He also investigated an OVI that I wanted to highlight, where the driver had 11 prior OVIs and 7 prior OVI convictions, making Officer Ambergy's arrest a felony of the 4th degree. He also had a good case where just a simple shoplifting, but the subject was lying about her identity. And in that case, in addition to the theft, they also recovered some drug paraphernalia. But got a great attitude, very helpful for others officers on shift, hard worker, wants to learn, just doing a really great job. So really excited with his performance. Other community outreach updates, February 4th, we swore in James Harwick. We had coffee with a cop at the senior center on February 6th, and then February 27th, we assisted feeding Medina County. If there's no questions there, I will roll into the overdose report, which we already touched on a little bit. We do have 3 year-to-date, 3 individual victims, and 1 overdose death so far for the year. We've administered Narcan 3 times, and twice, 2 of those occasions, those individuals were saved. And that'll conclude my report if there's no questions.
Any questions, gentlemen? I'm good.
Nope.
Okay,
Good.
move on to our fire chief, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Copley. On the first page, we'll start with our fire numbers. They are up from last year. So for the month of February, we had 21 calls. That puts us year-to-date 7 over where we were last year at a total of 47. Out of those 21 calls, 15 were within the city, 4 in the township. We provided mutual aid on 2 occasions. Had 18 officer callouts, 24 inspection activities, car seat public education, we had 3 different classes. Average response time, just under 6. Average firefighter on duty, just about 4.5. Average firefighter recall, just under 3. So that gave us, for the month of February, average total firefighter turnout, just over 7 members at that time. So all of those numbers, the total runs were about 17% above where we were last year. So February has been a busy month, and you'll see that also on the EMS side. Moving down on the property breakdowns, again, all the residential take up the majority of our calls, both fire and EMS. Our busy time for the month of February was at 12 o'clock. We had 21 with a close second at 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning for those. Calls by station, we had 202 out of Station 1 and 92 out of Station 2. Moving on to the second page, our incident types. On the left-hand side, the majority, again, is the EMS calls that we respond to. Our EMS data for the calls, we had 117 calls within District 1, 87 in District 2, and 28 in City 3, District 3. So that gave us a total of 232 for the city. We had 2 out of the city, and then the township, we had 22 calls. That gave us, for the month, 256. So year-to-date, we are at 530 calls. Again, District 1, City 1 is the majority of our calls. The downtown area. Our average response time, just over 413 on that. Mutual aid, we provided mutual aid on 2 different occasions. We received mutual aid on 4. We had 75 second ambulance calls, third ambulance calls, we had 18, and we had 1 call, it was a 4th ambulance call. Any questions on that page?
None for me, thank you.
Moving on to the next, our hospital transports. The busiest one that we transported to was Wadsworth at 62. Close second was Barberton at 54 transports. So our EMS yearly comparison, moving on down, through February, we're at 530, which is a 7% increase, 37 calls. So our total calls for service, both fire and EMS, were about 65 above where we were this time last year at a total of 609, which is a 12% increase. So we have been averaging just over 10 calls a day for both fire and EMS. Moving on down our ALS, BLS data, we had 136 ALS calls and 67 BLS. We did have 2 overdose patients, and we provided Narcan twice on those. And then moving over on the right-hand side, our squad usage, February, nothing out of the ordinary. We were doing some maintenance on some of the squads, so they were getting rotated. We're still trying to rotate all of those on that. And then our busiest call volume for the day of the week, we actually had a tie with Monday and Tuesday at 38, and then close second Friday and Saturday at 37. So pretty well staggered out there. Any questions on that page? All right, moving out on our training, some of the in-house training that we did for both fire and EMS, talking about hoarder homes. We did some elevator rescue, aerial setup, water supply. EMS, we talked about some landing zones and trauma. 3 members did provide or participate in some outside trainings. Again, the second part to the ice rescue training and a SWAT training. The big news for February, we had 2 retirements. One of our full-timers, Kurt Lauer, retired officially on the 3rd, and then Parker Gear wanted to beat him out, so he retired the same day, but at noon instead of the end of the day. And then we did have our pre-con meeting. Myself, Assistant Chief Potter, and Andy Reed did the pre-construction meeting for the new tanker. Went up to Michigan and completed that on the 18th and 19th of February. And that was the events for February. And that concludes that portion. Moving on to the part-time open shifts. So for February, we ended with 57% of the shifts being filled. And then when we take a look at the open shifts, both full-timers and part-timers, getting all of those shifts filled, we were averaging at 67% got filled. And if there's no questions, that completes my report.
Any questions?
I just have one, which is more out of curiosity, is what is the map quiz?
So the map quiz, so basically what we did was Assistant Chief Potter pulled some of the roads that, let's just say we don't get called that often on. So we'll write those down and basically we go with the members and, all right, do you know where this road is? We do have mapping software, but we learned some of the regular residences, the areas that we go to, some of the streets, but there's some that we threw some odd ones in them, like Othello, Hamlet, some of those that we don't hear that often, that there's actually not a road, but it's in the street directory. Some of the roads that we just normally don't travel, just to see if they do know where it's at and how to get to that road.
Okay.
Yeah, GPSs and stuff anymore on your phone, I mean, you can go any place you want anymore without having to know any of that.
It's technology, it's good as long as it's working, but in a disaster, that can come into play, and so try to remember those.
Would you like to take the test, Mr. George?
No, ironically, I have just recently heard a story that the ambulance driver had to switch with the person in the back because it was taking too long. The person didn't quite know how to get to the hospital in the quickest amount of time. So it just kind of coincided with something that I had heard, and I was...
See, and that's one of the things that I've tried. Most people, they realize it's just same thing when you go in a building, everybody always goes in this entrance. Same thing when you always go to this store or this address, you always go this way. Yeah. Well, what if you have to go a different way? Yeah. And, that's why I always say you got to know more than one way to this facility.
Okay. That's all I have, just curiosity.
Sure.
Okay, that brings us to staffing updates. Mr. Hiscock.
Thank you, Mr. Copley, members of the committee. I'll work through these. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. The patrol officer process update. We've been very active in this realm, as the committee knows, all year long and tail end of last year. We had an additional officer accept a conditional offer, additional candidate accept a conditional offer, I should say. That individual is finishing up the pre-hiring testing. Essentially one more stage for that individual, and I think we'll be able to make that conditional offer a firm offer shortly. We have one officer who Chief and I was talking to, a candidate who I think we're going to try to enroll in the Lorain County Community College Police Academy program. That would be starting in April for that particular candidate. Then we have 2 folks who have completed all of the steps in their process. However, looking at academy openings, we probably won't be able to get them into an academy until August. And so we'll have to make maybe some firm offers a little bit later with some commitments that would be conditioned upon them passing the entrance exam, if you will, PT-wise, for those academies come August time. So people are lined up. The issue becomes when you have folks without certifications, getting them into academies is the challenge kind of thing. So that's where we are on the police side of things. Fire side.
Before you move on.
Yes.
I thought it was about time to start police contract negotiations. Where are we at in that?
We have started police contract negotiations. They started actually late last year. So I think we're moving through processes there. We have no resolution to bring to council at this point in time, so we'll probably begin the next step in that process.
Okay. Thank you.
In terms of firefighter paramedic process update, we have a civil service test that is currently posted. Application deadline is March 24th with a testing date of March 27th. Thanks to Chief on that. He reminded me tonight. I forgot those dates, so I appreciate that. Part-time fire and EMS update. It's probably time for myself and Chief to look at some applications that we might have collected, see about a next round of hiring in that particular phase. It's been a little bit of time since the fall, I think, since we last looked, so we'll take a look at those applications.
And we got 2 out of the last.
Yeah, we're 2 are waiting. There's still 2
We're
in
still
the
waiting.
process.
We're still in the
Yeah.
process.
Yep.
Okay.
And then dispatch process that also has a civil service test examination posted. The test for that particular civil service exam is not until May 13th. That was the earliest we could get a testing date for that particular test. And those are my updates.
Questions, gentlemen?
None for me.
Moves us on to legislative items.
I think on this one, I'm going to hand off to Chief Chafin. He's got most of the background information on the donation legislation.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So over the last 2 years, committee's familiar with, we have updated both our body-worn cameras and our in-car cameras. It was a 2-year process because we used grants to supplement either all or portions of those projects. For the in-car specifically, it was a 25-75 split between PD dollars and grant dollars. So that project is complete as of last year. The reason for switching from our cameras was that the system that we had purchased, or the system that we had previously, had been bought out by Motorola. The system that we had is no longer serviceable, repairable. You can't purchase replacement parts for those. So utilizing those grants made a lot of sense for us to move to newer technology and update those vehicles and body-worn cameras. Our mutual aid partners at the City of Montville, they have the same generation of body-worn cameras and in-car cameras as we had. We had previously donated body-worn cameras to them just to say, hey, if you need them, if any of them go down, now you have spares to get more life out of your system. This would essentially be the same exact request, is that they would like to take possession of our old in-car camera system that we're no longer using. It has very minimal value in terms of a dollar amount because it's an old aged system. So this would just allow our mutual aid partner to have this stuff on hand, so if they lose a DVR, a camera, or other components, they could essentially use ours for spares. So in total, it turns out to be 13 DVRs, 13 front cameras with cables, 13 back seat cameras, 10 inline routers, 11 PoE switches, 13 BWC sync docks, 13 display and controllers, and the best estimate on the value that we had was about $2,600. So we were looking for legislation to formally donate that equipment to Montville PD so that they could have it as spares.
Makes sense to me. I mean, to help our neighbors, you know, they help us. Gentlemen,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts?
Yep, all for it.
I'm for it. So I'll make a motion that we move this on to council and make a donation to our friends in Montville.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I see here that you're asking for suspension of the rules. Could we at least go 2 readings to give the public a chance to input?
I think we certainly could. in the end of the day, the request for the suspension was merely because we're not using the equipment and we know
Yeah.
they can use it, so that's all.
But
yeah.
since it was originally, city equipment and stuff, I'd just like to, give the public a chance to give it.
And I don't think they're dealing with an urgent need tomorrow where they need one of these pieces now. It would just be
So it
nice
could
for
go
them.
3 readings. And if one of their pieces of equipment break down, you can just loan it to them until the ordinance
You guys can
passes.
borrow this until
How's
the
that
ordinance
sound?
passes.
Is that okay with you guys?
That's fine with me, sure.
So all in favor of the motion to move on to city council, donation of city property and police car camera equipment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Coffey, just want to clarify, do you want to go 2 readings or 3 on that?
3.
Okay.
I just think, since it's, city property, we should, we probably won't hear nothing from anyone, but at least they've had the opportunity to weigh in that we're just not giving any equipment away. But like I said, if someone just breaks, just loan it to them. Number 6 is prescription drug take-back day.
I'll let Chief
hit that one.
handle that
Sure.
one.
So Wadsworth will be a registered site as we've done in the past. That date will be April 26th, and the time will be from 10 to 2. So our partners at the Drug Task Force, Medina County Drug Task Force, they will be on site on that Saturday. They'll have their tent set up right outside of our public lobby. So if anybody in the public has unused old medications that they'd like to safely drop off rather than throwing away, definitely not flushing, but it provides an easy way to dump those meds off. So April 26th from 10 to 2.
Are you going to put that on your social media page?
We will, yep, when we have reminders,
As
probably
it
the
gets
week of
closer.
as it gets closer, yep.
Okay, good. Okay, that moves us on to other. We'll start with Mr. Hiscock.
Nothing from me.
Mr. Linder.
I just want to remind everybody, on Wednesday, the 19th at 9:50 is the annual tornado drill. So barring any bad weather that day, we will be setting off the tornado sirens. And just to remind people, those sirens are not necessarily to be heard in your house. It's for outdoor to notify you of that. Along with that, strongly recommend signing up for our emergency notification system that we use in this community and Medina County, which is the WENS unit. So just remind
Since you
everybody.
brought that up, the emergency notification system, I've had several people ask or comment about the last time that it was used. We got 7 text messages within a half hour. So did we ever figure out what the problem was? What was the issue? Has the issue been corrected?
I don't know that Chief, I'm looking at you, I don't think I've heard from dispatcher Supervisor Cynthia as to whether that was operator error or technology. The last I understood from her, it was technology oriented.
Leaning towards technology.
But we were looking
Yeah.
into it, yeah. Because it appeared that our dispatcher activated that snow emergency parking ban
That's what it was.
appropriately. But why it went out 7 times in a matter of a minute, we're not sure. So we know we sent it once, but I have not. I will follow up with her and let the committee know.
I mean,
what
it'd
we
probably be
find
nice to
out.
put something on the police web page or something, just up because a lot of people was complaining about it on Facebook. Why does it take 7 times to hear about it? For a parking. Now, if it's a storm warning, they get 1, but if it's a parking ban, they got 7.
But we have a lot of violators, so one of the thorough. We're just very thorough on that.
I just thought I'd bring that up.
No, we can look into that, and I will report to the committee on what we found.
Chief Chafin, anything?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Yurcheck?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Rossman? I can always count on you.
I always come back to one. How are things going with the radio tower? Any updates on that?
Progress, but not the progress that I'd love to sit here and
Okay.
put it on your agenda on that. We've had a couple of meetings between our communication division folks and the Marks Systems IT folks talking about pathways to POPs. And I'll explain what that means. Basically, the tower is got to be connected to Marks central hubs, which are POP locations. The central location that they had identified to use was the one in Akron using our tower. But they need to first come out of the First Energy proprietary facility and then use some method to get from the tower to some system of fiber that'll get it to the Akron pop. Well, as they worked through that, we obviously said, well, we certainly can do that. But what we need to do is make sure that First Energy allows us on their property in order to do that. Again, roadblock in terms of that. But what they were saying is, we already have the fiber out to the roadway. And we have a partnership with an entity who has fiber that can manage that. Well, we suggested to the Marks folks that, well, you might want to look at, if you have that relationship with this particular fiber company, they have a direct connect to a pop in Columbus, but sitting on Silver Creek Road. So you wouldn't have the construction costs and the fiber connectivity agreement issues of getting to Akron. So that's where we left it. They were very excited about the opportunity to maybe understand how to do that. They liked the fact that it wasn't going to Akron and rather going to Columbus from a redundancy and protection of circuits system. So we were able to enlighten the Marks folks a little bit more on what it is. They still seem to be struggling a little bit with First Energy's communication style in terms of talking about the project progress and those things. However, Marks has again noted that they've ordered the generator, ordered all of the system accessories for our tower. They have everything. Some of it's actually been delivered on site. It's just a matter of making sure they can connect it to the POP and the network to make it work. So I'm very, very hopeful, more hopeful than I have been in other months. It's just I don't have anything solid to report to the committee on progress.
That's fair.
Hope is different than progress, and I want to make sure I'm reporting on progress. So.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
And I don't have anything, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.